Today, we are delighted to be able to host Dr. Chung Mong Joon, his son, for this address at SAIS. Dr. Chung is, of course, as everybody knows here, I think, in his 6th term as a member of the Korean National Assembly. He serves on the Foreign Affairs, Trade, and Unification Committees, and some others as well. But Dr. Chung has done so much else that it is hard to believe that one man could have accomplished all of this. He is also chairman of the Grand National Party. He was a candidate for president of Korea in 2002. But in addition to all of this, he is chairman of the Hyundai Heavy Industries company, president of the Korea-U.S. Inter-Parliamentary Council, and interestingly for the American participants here, vice president of the International Football Association. And indeed, I believe he's also president, or was president, of the Korean Football Association. But that's not, it doesn't stop there. He founded Ulsan University, and I think is chairman of the Board of Trustees. Now again, for the Americans in the audience, this is a 16,000 student university with over 1,000 faculty members and students. He's also founder of one of the most successful think tanks in international affairs in Korea, the Asan Institute for Policy Studies. Somehow, he finds time also to be a member of the board of trustees for Korea University. He's on a policy advisory board, I think, for Asia with the RAND Corporation. He's on one of the principal boards for the Salzburg Global Seminar. And also, not least, he has been a past member of the Board of Trustees of Johns Hopkins University, where he received his PhD. Dr. Chung will speak to us today on a subject of international security, Korea's new security paradigm. The timeliness of this presentation could not be greater or of higher moment than the issue of security in Northeast Asia. We will listen with great attention to your remarks. Most significantly, we will listen because you have just announced your candidacy for the next presidency of South Korea. Please welcome Dr. Chung.
네, 반갑습니다. 제가 영어로 말씀드리도록 하겠습니다. Professor Doran, thank you very much for your efforts trying to understand my career. By the way, please call me MJ, my first name initial. There are many MJs in the world. Mick Jagger, my favorite personality. Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, and recently I invited to Korea Professor Michael Joseph Sandel, famous his lecture on justice at Harvard, and I was very glad to learn that he is also MJ, Michael Joseph. Let me tell you about myself first. I studied economics in Korea. I served as an officer in the Korean Army. Then I went to the US to study at MIT Sloan School of Management. After that, I went back to Korea to work at a shipbuilding company. However, I felt that my true calling was in politics. I decided to run for National Assembly of Korea. So I decided to study international relations. That is how I came to SAIS in 1985. Some told me that for a politician, it was a waste of time to get a PhD. But SAIS education opened my eyes to the world. The training I received at SAIS has proven invaluable. I believe I made the right decision. Today, it is great to be back. Today, I came to speak to you, as Professor Doran said, as a presidential candidate. But next time, when I come back here, I want to come back as President of the Republic of Korea. For this, I need your moral, if not physical, moral support. It is a great pleasure and honor for me to share with you my thoughts on the security situation around the Korean Peninsula. Please allow me to start my address on a personal note. This is the picture of the Korean War. People trying to cross the Han River on a broken bridge. I was born in 1951 at the height of the Korean War in Busan, a port city in the south of the peninsula. Like millions of others, my family was fleeing the invading North Korean army. My country was literally on the verge of extinction. This is the picture of my family taken in 1953. They decided to take the picture because they were so glad to go back to Seoul near the end of the war. Can you locate me in this picture?
The middle?
The baby.
The only reason that I am standing here before you is because the United States came to the rescue of South Korea under the banner of the United Nations. At the time of my birth, South Korea's per capita income was around $80 US. It was the poorest country in the world. As of 2010, last year, South Korea ranks as the 7th largest exporter and the ninth largest trading nation in the world. Such success would hardly have been possible without the security blanket provided by the Korea-US alliance since the end of the Korean War. History shows that when the US abandoned Korea, the latter's security and existence was threatened. The Taft-Kachura Memorandum as of 1905, a secret conversation between US Secretary of War Taft and Japanese Prime Minister Kachura sealed Korea's fate. Fresh from victory in the Russo-Japanese War, Japan took this as a clear sign that the US would not object to the Japanese colonization of Korea. In 1945, by defeating Japan, the US literally liberated Korea. 1949, Chinese communists defeated the nationalists and communized the vast landmass called China. Communism seemed to be sweeping the whole world. In South Korea, intellectuals were defecting to the north. That same year, US forces withdrew from South Korea. In January 1950, US Secretary of State Dean Acheson announced that Korea was outside the US defense perimeter in Pacific. It was interpreted by the communist bloc in North as an open invitation to take over South Korea. 5 months later, the North launched a full-scale invasion against the South with the aid of the Soviet Union and China. The Korea-US Mutual Defense Treaty, signed after the armistice in 1953, was designed to keep the US engaged in peninsular affairs. The Korean Peninsula, as well as the region, have since enjoyed a period of unparalleled peace and prosperity. However, South Korea's economic development, democratization, and the end of the Cold War began to erode some of the rationale as well as the public support for the alliance. The South Korean public's perception of the US underwent radical changes. Young generation who grew up in an affluent country with no memory of the Korean War began questioning the role of the US. To them, the US was no longer an ally who saved the country from the brink of extinction, but a foreign power meddling in inter-Korean affairs. During the past decade, the center-left governments in South Korea began experimenting with the Sunshine Policy towards North Korea. The rationale for the Sunshine Policy was based on Aesop's fable about the wind and the sun competing to force a man to take off his coat. The wind tried first to blow the coat of the man. However, the wind failed because the man held the coat tighter. The sun then shined the warmth, and the man voluntarily took off his coat. The assumption of the Sunshine Policy was that rather than applying pressure, economic aid would change North Korea. Even though George Kennan warned the whole world about the nature of communism in his famous long telegram, South Korea assumed that hospitality would be accumulated in North. The Sunshine Policy also assumed that North Korea's leaders were rational and reasonable. After meeting with Kim Jong-il, former U.S. Secretary of State Madeleine Albright said that Kim Jong-il was a very good listener, a good interlocutor as well as very decisive and very practical. Former Japanese Prime Minister Koizumi found Kim Jong-il gentle, cheerful, and very witty, quick-witted. Such comments only reinforced the Sunshine Policy. Normalization of diplomatic relations with China in 1992 not only ushered in a honeymoon period in Sino-Korean relations, but also strengthened the Sunshine Policy. In 2004, only 12 years after the normalization, China replaced the United States as South Korea's largest trading partner. The bilateral trade reached $200 billion last year. It is greater than Korea-US and Korea-Japan trade combined. Today, there are more than 120 daily flights between China and South Korea. Even in the face of North Korea's nuclear test in 2006 or the launch of long-range missiles, South Korean government's faith in the Sunshine Policy was not shaken. South Korea's infatuation with China could not easily be dampened either. However, a history interpretation controversy began to turn South Korea's public opinion against China. China claimed that the various ancient Korean kingdoms who dominated Manchuria and northern Korean peninsula were Chinese. With the election of the conservative Lee Myung-bak government in 2007, South Korean attitude towards North Korea and China began to change. As a candidate, Lee Myung-bak pledged that North Korea policy would no longer be dragged by the North. Like many conservatives in South Korea, he regarded the Sunshine Policy as one-sided gesture hardly appreciated by the North, nor did it bring about any meaningful change in North Korea. However, even after the inauguration of the conservative government, a significant segment of South Korean population refused to give up the Sunshine Policy. They criticized the new government's North Korea policy as reactionary. In April 2008, during a state visit to the US, President Lee announced that South Korea would lift the ban on US beef imports. The ban had been in effect since 2003 in fear of the mad cow disease. Malicious rumors began to spread that eating US beef causes the fatal mad cow disease. Many who held anti-American sentiment, as well as those disgruntled by the inauguration of conservative government, began to demonstrate on the street. Massive rallies rocked the new government throughout the summer of 2008. The turning point came last year, 2010. Last Saturday, March 26, marked the first anniversary of the sinking of the South Korean Navy vessel Cheonan. The dastardly act demonstrated once again the violent and belligerent nature of the North Korean regime. However, a large segment of South Korean public refused to believe that North Korea was the culprit. Investigation by an international team of experts from South Korea, United States, United Kingdom, Australia, and Sweden concluded that the ship was sunk by a torpedo launched by a North Korean submarine. However, a public survey conducted soon after the release of the government report showed that nearly 70% of Korean people did not believe government report. In the latter part of last year, it was revealed that North Korea had an extensive uranium enrichment facility. Next day, North Korea bombarded South Korean island of Yeonpyeong near the border. This proved to be the tipping point. South Korean public opinion began to turn against North Korea dramatically. China's refusal to restrain or condemn North Korea turned South Korean public opinion against China as well. The Sunshine Policy based its rationale on ease of favor. A more relevant analogy for South-North relations may be another ease of favor. A scorpion was trying to cross a stream, so he asked a frog to carry him across the stream on his back, but the frog refused, saying, "If I carry you across, you will sting me, and I will die." The scorpion replied, "Why would I do that? If I sting you, I'll drown too." Convinced, the frog began swimming across the stream with the scorpion on his back. However, in midstream, the scorpion stung the frog. As they were both drowning, the frog cried out, "Why did you do it? Now you have killed both of us." The scorpion replied, "I can't help it. It is my nature." Let us look at some of the survey results that show the changes in South Korea's public opinion on key national security issues. These poll results show South Koreans reawakening to the reality of the nation's security issues. After a decade of sunshine policy towards North Korea and clinging to the hope that China would become a more responsible stakeholder, South Korea finds itself in a tough neighborhood once again. Soon after its inauguration in 2003, the previous Roh Moo-hyun government started a review of transferring the wartime Operation Command and Control from the US to South Korea. President Roh said, "I'm the president of Korea, but I do not even have the power to command my forces in war." Already suffering under the heavy burden of conducting 2 wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, the US was only too happy to oblige. US Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld reportedly said to President Roh, "Mr. President, you are knocking on the open door." The talks for the upcoming transfer proceeded rapidly. The US set the transfer date to 2009. The Roh Moo-hyun government became alarmed and asked for a delay. The compromise was 2012. The 2012 next year is also a very important year for Korean security. So in view of several important factors affecting South Korea's security, South Korean government asked for a delay in the transfer of wartime operational command from 2012 to 2015. It was to minimize the possibility of miscalculation by the North Korean regime. Many in South Korea feel that as long as North Korea possesses nuclear weapons, outcome transfer is an ill-conceived, irresponsible, and dangerous policy that needs to be discarded. If we look at the sheer magnitude of the geopolitics of the vast Eurasia continent, Russia, China, and North Korea, the fact that a small country like South Korea, located at the tip of the continent, remains a free democracy is a miracle. It is a miracle in progress. It is also the reason why I proposed the reintroduction of tactical nuclear weapons into the South. The weapons were voluntarily withdrawn from the peninsula after the denuclearization agreement between North and South in 1992. North Korea has violated the agreement since then. China seems unwilling to pressure North Korea to give up its nuclear program. It does not want North Korea to collapse either. To make things worse, US seems to be exhausted from the endless and fruitless negotiations with North Korea. It is now perhaps willing to settle for non-proliferation rather than complete elimination of North Korea's nuclear weapons. The threat of a counter-nuclear force may be the only thing that will discourage North Korea from developing the nuclear arsenal. Some say that this will only give North Korea excuse to develop WMDs. However, North Korea does not need an excuse and already is a de facto nuclear power. Others argue that this will start an arms race in Northeast Asia. However, in any case, it will force China to make the ultimate choice, whether to stay as the sole nuclear power in East Asia or to let the entire region become nuclear. We have tried every means at our disposal to denuclearize North Korea for the past 30 years. They have all failed. Maintaining the status quo is not an option. Now is the time to act. North Korea is once again asking for food aid. The World Food Program has just released a report on significant food shortages in North Korea. South Korea is willing and ready to provide aid to the North. However, we are not prepared to do that under threat. For a policy to be effective, we must look at the consequences as well. We, the Korean people, deeply sympathize with the plight of the Japanese people. A peaceful and prosperous Japan is vital for the region's geostrategic balance. We, South Korea, need to continue to upgrade our relationship with China. Currently, the bilateral relationship is officially characterized as strategic partnership. However, beyond the rhetoric, the relationship between South Korea and China is still mostly based on economic interest. The relationship must move to a new dimension to become an alliance of values based on shared values such as peace, human rights, and respect for international law. I hope you like this picture. You can understand what this picture is about. Currently, there are talks between South Korea, China, and Japan to build undersea tunnels to link the three countries physically together. The Northeast Asian community is not a dream. We are already deeply linked economically. Popular culture is creating a new common cultural sphere in the region. If we can link ourselves through common ideas, values, and institutions, Northeast Asia can become a bastion of peace and prosperity, not only for the region, but for the whole world. I'm now coming to a conclusion. I really appreciate your patience and attention. Korea-US alliance continues to be the linchpin of peace and security on the Korean Peninsula and the region. It was forged in battles and called a blood alliance. Now it is based on shared values and institutions of liberal democracy and free market economy. When the Korea-US FTA is ratified by the US Congress, the bilateral relationship will be elevated to a new height. In April 2012, next year, South Korea will host second Nuclear Security Summit. The first summit was convened in April 2010 by President Obama as the first step towards a nuclear weapon-free world. We hope that the summit will become an occasion to persuade China, India, and Pakistan to join in the global effort to reduce and eliminate nuclear weapons. This should be the defining moment to start the 21st century version of the START Treaty between China and the US. I would like to conclude by reflecting on Korean unification. Reunification of Korea will come whether we want it or not. Korean reunification is like an earthquake. We know it will come. We just do not know when and how. Today, some people worry about the cost of reunification. However, all that the North Korean people need is freedom. Once again, once we give them freedom, the long-suffering but strong and resilient people in North Korea will be more than able to take care of themselves. Of course, I do not need to tell you this. We all know the power of freedom. Let us give North Koreans freedom. Today, I ask all of you to join us in these historical endeavors. Thank you very much.
Dr. M.J. Chung agreed
Just
kindly
the MJ.
MG. Agreed to take questions. So please identify yourself and ask a brief, direct question, and then we'll proceed. Thank you. What is the first question? Please.
Kent Calder, Reischauer Center, SAIS. You've spoken very eloquently about the importance of the U.S.-Korea relationship, and I think all of us certainly can understand from what you've said in your pictures how deeply and why you believe that. You also here have the neighborhood of the future, the making of a Northeast Asia that is becoming more integrated. In that sort of a world, what do you think needs to be done politically to strengthen the Korea-U.S. relationship so that it doesn't come into tension with Northeast Asia?
We understand that European community, now called the EU, is now not only economic but also political and cultural entity. In Northeast Asia, between and among South Korea, Japan, and China, the degree of economic integration has proceeded maybe higher than the European level before the inauguration of the EU. But the difference between Asia and Europe is, in Europe, I understand, political leaders really took the initiative to bring European countries together to make not only economic but political entity. In Asia, we can observe significant degree of economic integration, but we don't see any political leadership to bring these countries together. So I understand that's the difference, and if we can solve this difference, I think we can have a better community in Northeast Asia.
Adi, freshman student here and speech. My question concerns the the nature of the U.S.-Korea alliance in light of changing demographics. So, for example, you referenced the current generation, the separation and gulf between perceptions of the U.S. How do you see this relationship evolving if, as a democracy, if current or future generations don't share the same viewpoints on the role of the U.S.?
Korean Navy frigate sank last year, 1 year ago, and the international 5 countries export from 5 countries, around 70 scientists made a conclusion that North Korea was the culprit. But still, at the time, 70% of South Korean people did not believe the report made by the international scientists. But when the North Korea had artillery shelling on a small island near the border, South Korean public opinion turned against North Korea, against China, who never failed to stand behind North Korea, whatever the occasion was. And so South Korea's young people's opinions are important in every country. Their perceptions, their opinions towards North and China changed a lot. Recently, there was a big news in South Korea. A popular TV star, he voluntarily enlisted himself in a Marine, and around 1,000 reporters came to the Marine unit to report his joining the Korean submarine, 1,000 reporters. So this is a kind of a reflection of the changes of the mind of young Korean people. If your question is whether young people's mind can change anytime, maybe you are right, but we'll see.
Next question. Well, while people are thinking of the next question, perhaps I can have a question here. I listened very carefully to your security analysis, and I think it was deep and it was very sophisticated about the politics involved. And as I recall, you emphasized the need for retaining tactical nuclear weapons in the area, especially given the kinds of changes that are taking place, as I understand it, in terms of force organization and so on, planning. But my question would be this: if that didn't happen, what would be the response in terms of South Korea? Presumably the American capability would still be there, the alliance would be still strong, but would that be sufficient to make South Korea feel secure? Or would it perhaps feel that it had to have nuclear weapons of its own?
Yeah, correct. In the face of North Korea's nuclear armament, we may have several options. First option is to give up. Second option is your proposal. We may try to build our own nuclear weapon, but many people say it's not that easy. So third option is the reintroduction of the tactical nuclear warheads, which were withdrawn from the peninsula in 1992. When I made this proposal, maybe both American and South Korean military, they opposed. They say it's an extra burden. They said nuclear umbrella provided by the US for South Korea can be enough. They may say nuclear submarine, nuclear bomber, long-range strategic aircraft carriers are enough to protect South Korea from any military, well, North Korea's nuclear threat. I hope they are right, but the problem and the limit of nuclear umbrella is that nuclear umbrella is good, but it cannot be used as a bargaining chip to dismantle North Korea's nuclear weapon. So question to ourselves is whether peaceful coexistence with nuclear North Korea is possible. My answer is no. If the answer is no, question is we have to find an alternative.
Okay. Other questions? Comments? Yep.
Yes, one thing from the SAIS, strategic studies. Two questions aligned, I believe. Do you, are you in favor, or do you anticipate an indefinite continuation of U.S. ground forces stationed in South Korea? And second, in terms of South Korea developing nuclear weapons, how would that be affected perhaps by Japan itself developing nuclear weapons?
Yes. Yeah. First question is whether South Korean people want to see, did you say permanent or what?
Well, indefinite.
Indefinite, yeah, indefinite presence of U.S. troops on Korean soil. Well, we need presence of American forces on South Korea because we have to deter, not only defend, we have to deter, we have to discourage North Korea's temptation to attack South Korea. In order to deter North Korea's temptation, we need a very overwhelming military power. That's the reason why we need the presence of your troops. Suppose Korea is reunited. The question is whether Korea still needs the presence of your troops. Maybe yes, but maybe no. If China changes itself, China continues its economic development, and if China becomes China is a market economy, but politically it is closed. If China changes itself politically, more open, more friendly, I hope you can ask the same question to me at the time. We hope China changes itself. Some people say it's difficult for us to expect China changes itself, its political nature, but who knows, we will see. Second question is whether South Korea and Japan can go nuclear. Is that your question?
Yes, sir.
What I learned at SAIS during 85, 87, at the time, people said, in order for a country to become a nuclear state, well, it has to be big enough. Geographically, it must be big enough to survive the first attack and to launch the second revenge attack. So, some Japanese may think they are too small, but some Japanese may think they are long enough from Hokkaido to Okinawa to survive the first attack. But the problem is, if Chinese leaders, Chinese leaders simply assume that Japanese and South Korean politicians do not have the political will to go nuclear. If Chinese leaders think so, that's rather dangerous for the region. And people feel they are considered weak people, they don't like them.
Yes, my name is Taewon Ha, correspondent for 동아일보, South Korea. When you mentioned about the reintroduction of tactical nuclear weapon, right after your remarks in U.S., Mr. Seymour, who is the WMD coordinator, he said pretty similar thing. If South Korean government wants it and the U.S. agrees, maybe we can reintroduce the tactical nuclear weapon to Korean Peninsula again. So was your remark coordinated with Mr. Seymour, or do you think that's still a possible option to consider by both governments?
Well, as I mentioned before, at the moment, the military, both American and Korean military, they seem to consider it's an extra burden. But to eliminate North Korea's nuclear program, I think that's the only effective alternative we should pursue. Nothing is free. We have to I have to talk to Korean government, and then I hope Gary Seymour can also talk to his government. And I believe that's the only way to persuade North Korea that we are serious on this development. I think it has been 30 years for North Korea to develop its nuclear weapon, and people said that's the only success story North Korea has now. So it must be very difficult for North Korean government to give up the only success they now have. But we have to tell North Koreans that nuclear weapon cannot help North Korea's security. Thank you.
My name is Mashfaq, and I'm
조금 크게 하시면 좋겠네요.
my name is Mashfaq Batumbayev. I'm from Mongolia.
앞으로 좀 나오시서 말씀해 주세요.
Mongolia.
I just wanted to ask that how we expect leadership change in next year in North Korea. So I just wanted to know that how do you assess the impact of this leadership change in your policy.
Leadership change in North Korea, and how does that impact your policy?
And actually, indeed, I have traveled in North Korea, and I know that they have a very strong feel of insecurity. Thank you. I have traveled in North Korea, and I know that they have a very strong feeling of insecurity there, and especially in the moment of this leadership change. And if you introduce the tactical nuclear weapon, U.S. tactical missiles into South Korea in a moment of this leadership change, I'm afraid that it will actually accelerate the insecurity and maybe drive them to open conflict. So what do you think about that as the next president?
Well, Kim Jong-il used to say that the military regime, military dictatorship in North Korea is a kind of the indispensable system for two reasons. North Korean government still propagate that it was South Korean government who started the Korean War. So in order to fight South Korea and imperialist U.S., they need to be prepared to fight. Kim Jong-il used to say he needs a security guarantee from the U.S. not to invade North Korea. That's the kind, I would say that's a kind of a typical communist propaganda. They say there's a external threat, so we have to get together. That's wrong. He needs security, Kim Jong-il needs security guarantee not from the US but from his own people. We are observing political changes in Northern Africa and Middle East, and those people, those leaders in the region, they need security guarantee from their own people, not from the U.S. Same for North Korea.
Ed Fulner from the Heritage Foundation. MJ, you're leading a distinguished bipartisan delegation here, and among other subjects, you're talking on Capitol Hill about the proposed U.S.-Korea FTA. Number one, what response are you receiving? And number two, who goes first, the United States or Korea?
It is my honor that I'm now in Washington as the President of Korea U.S. Parliamentary Council. In front of this room, we have Dr. Kim, the former floor leader of the Democratic Party, and Ms. Park Young-sun, and they are leading opposition members. And we have 4 colleagues from the government party. I'm also a government party member. Your question is what kind of response we received today from your senators and congressmen. We met many senators and congressmen today, and we all understand the chairman focus of the Finance Committee is an important man. And he used to demand more opening, bigger opening for the U.S. beef into Korean market. Well, before we came here, we heard the news that the Republicans decided to put the Colombia and Panama FTA together with South Korean FTA. So we are concerned that this might be the scheme to block, to stop the passage of the FTA. But people said this is not to block. They want to see the passage of the three FTAs. We met with Republican minority leader McConnell and Baucus and two other senators and a group of congressmen. They all said, they are supporting FTAs. And Baucus said, even majority of American people oppose any kind of FTA, including Korea FTA. That's what he said. But he wants to see the passage of the three FTAs. It cannot be passed literally as a package. It will be passed, it will be deliberated one by one, but they said they all support the FTA. Thank you very much for your interest, and we need your support very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to take any more questions, or
Maybe one.
one here?
No, no, two.
One more.
Take two.
Take two. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. My name is Adam Ojo. I work here in Washington at the Korean Embassy, actually, in Public Affairs and the Cultural Center. So I might be changing the subject a little bit here, but I wanted to ask you a little bit about the idea of South Korean soft power, which is something that I work with on a daily basis. For example, not just Korean culture, but also sort of Korean brands and the popularity of that, and also participation in the international community. At least in my work, I've seen the power of those things to change public opinion of countries. For example, we see the popularity of South Korean dramas in North Korea and the fact that they're very valuable contraband. It certainly affects public opinion. Even President Obama, we know, is a taekwondo. He has some taekwondo experience, and I think that affects the relationship. So I guess I wanted to ask if you have an idea or a vision for the image of South Korea, because it can certainly affect how other countries relate to it. So your thoughts on that, please?
I think some of my colleagues can answer your question better than myself. 우리 박영규 한번 This 박영선 worked here for Voice of America. You know what Voice of America is about? They are sending messages of freedom to the whole world, and they did a lot for the changes in Eastern Europe and also in China. Your question is whether popular Korean culture, including drama, songs, can change the image of South Korea. Yes, I think so. When the 2002 FIFA World Cup was co-hosted by Korea and Japan, people said it started to make young Japanese people think that they had a neighboring country called Korea. Before the tournament in 2002, according to various public opinion surveys, Japanese remained or pretended as if they were indifferent to South Korean affairs. Their attitude was something like, we don't know, we don't care. But with the football tournament co-hosted, it made young Japanese people think they have a neighbor. And then popular Korean culture, drama, and songs, very popular, not only in Japan, China, but in Indochina, in Middle East, even in Northern Africa. Well, so we do hope that kind of popular Korean culture can change the images of Korea in the eyes of global people. Thank you.
Good. Okay, one last question there.
My name is Ben-Hur. I call the Ben. You can call me Ben-Hur. I was the president of the Korean American in the state of Maryland. So I have two questions. One, so you are the expert of the economic matters, not just a politician. So what is your opinion of the Korean and U.S. FTA? What is good for the USA? What is good for the Korea? and what is the against someone? And second question, and so-called 2.5 million Korean Americans here, what do you expect from them? As a Korean American, it's a 2.5 million in America. So as you future president of Korea, what do you expect from them? That's it.
Your first question is whether the Korea-US FTA is good and how good. That's your first question, right?
No, both sides. What's good? What's
Yeah. We may not need Korea-US FTA if Korean Peninsula is located in the middle of Pacific. Korea Peninsula is located in Northeast Asia, at the end of Eurasia continent, and Korea is now leading trading nation in the world, so it is good for U.S. economy, good for Korean economy, but it is good for the alliance. So that's the reason why we need it. And second question is, what do I expect of 2.5 million Korean Americans in the States? I hope you remain healthy, happy, very patriotic. Thank you.